Andrew, I think we're going to have to retitle this show. We're finally live, pal, because we are back.
Finally live, pal.
A long, long absence. You know, the last show that we did was the weekend before Survivor Series.
Yeah, November 15th, I think, right?
I was looking at my notes, and we previewed Survivor Series. That's how long it's been since we recorded. So what's going on? How are things? How's the new year treating you?
I've been podcasting. I did the math. My first ever podcast I ever recorded was 2007. Okay.
There you go.
Was summer of 2007. I didn't start officially really podcasting till 2008-9. This is the longest break I ever took in 15 years. I needed a little break. I feel great now. I'm back. I took a little break. It gets hard. I don't know how Dave and Brian do it for all these years. I mean, Dave has been covering professional wrestling for, 4 decades. Brian has been covering this since the 90s. And they're able to do it. I couldn't do it. I just needed a couple weeks off. I took the couple weeks, and now I'm refreshed. It's amazing.
To give you the benefit of the doubt, this isn't your actual career. This is a really passionate, hardcore hobby. And sometimes when your real life gets in the way, the thing that can fall off is the hobby. Because you can't drop your job, right? The thing that actually puts the money on the table for the family. So I don't have any issues with you needing that time off. We do a lot of content. This is fun for us. And the second it stops being fun is probably when it's a good time to stop doing it. But you and I have said, for a while now, hey, this is just fun. So when we can do it, we're going to do it. And when we can catch up, we're going to catch up and we'll enjoy it. And, I was dying to text you yesterday, but I thought, let's save it for the show because I have no idea what you thought about Raw. I have no idea of anything I didn't see any tweets. I didn't see anything. So I'm dying to know what you thought about that Netflix presentation of a product that you've been watching since you were a little kid. 2025, Raw on Netflix, the production, the whole effort. What did you think about that?
So I will say there's not one Monday Night Raw that I've ever missed, okay? To the point that I've seen almost everything twice. Up until recent years, when the WWE Network came out, and it was like a nice little memory test, going through every show. And I know you're doing that now, right? You're going through a lot of previous shows.
Yeah.
I remember how I felt when I watched it for the first time, even those early Monday Night Raws, 94, 93. And, the presentation has always been, since the 90s, essentially the same. Right? It's always felt the same, Monday Night Raw. I will say, as a production and as a visual, this was something to another level. WWE production has, over the last, since Kevin Dunn exited, has been improving tremendously. They've taken a lot of risks with certain things that they do and with the way that they shoot, a very sports-centric. They're borrowing a lot of sports-centric ways of shooting, which is fantastic. This show looked like $1 billion product, which it is. It looked unbelievable. I had no complaints as far as visuals go. That arena, dude, is something else. That is a very special building. It is a state-of-the-art facility. I'm curious how it's going to look in the coming weeks when they go to not-so-new buildings.
Well, starting next week, because I'm going to be there in San Jose. Now, that San Jose building, I want to say it's 1993, so maybe as old as Raw. That's how old that building is.
I don't know. I don't know if WWE could do its magic, but there was a couple things visually that really helped. And those lights on the chairs, on the seats.
Yeah,
I expect every major NBA building, every major arena to start putting those in. That really gave it a cool look.
The thing about that arena is the idea, Ballmer's idea was to build a very basketball centric arena. Like he wanted to maximize everything for the Clippers because that's the who plays there. And so everything is designed like when it comes to acoustics and sound, like he wanted certain things, and the way that the center of the court is kind of related to every other seat that is in the building. But like you just said, for wrestling, it also looked tremendous, and I think it's going to look amazing for UFC too. But I think the thing is like I don't know what arenas are being built right now for franchises. Like I'm sure some buildings are about to be replaced, but this is now the state of the art where you just copy all of the great things about this building and try to do it with but I don't know how many people have Ballmer's money, because that was the other thing, is that he had the money to do it the way that he wanted, and we'll see if we get those copycat arenas. But I'm with you. This is like the perfect place for them to run this first show. It was just from soup to nuts. The whole thing was amazing.
Yeah, production. I mean, there was no denying the quality of Netflix and what they were able to do with the camera. Now, I don't know if this was an actual 4K stream or it was 1080 enhanced, and you could take that for whatever you think it means. Man, you could see the muscles on Dwayne's goosebumps.
Yeah.
And he did it. It really looked incredible. Now, this is, and I know we're going to talk about the actual product, but if you really think about it, this is Vince McMahon's vision. This is exactly what he wanted out of professional wrestling. This is the exact presentation that he always was looking to do. It's a variety hour. Monday Night Raw is a variety hour. You got 4 matches or 3.5 matches. The rest was just promos. And my wife said it perfectly. We were watching that Rhea Ripley entrance yesterday, which looked incredible on TV. And she goes, "Oh, this is," because we were at the Hammerstein, dude. We were at the Hammerstein 2 weeks ago for Ring of Honor. My wife, Jess, came to Ring of Honor. It's funny. That's her second. Out of all the shows she's gone to, Ring of Honor is probably the most, which is still hysterical. We're sitting, we had a great time. It was a fantastic show, a great time, and it's professional wrestling in an opera theater at the Hammerstein Ballroom.
Yeah.
And then you're watching this, and she looked at me and she goes, "This is not pro wrestling." I said, "Well, what is it?" And she goes, "It's a spectacle." And you know what? Hit the nail on the head. It is a spectacle. And that's what you're watching. And maybe you'll get the wrestling that you want to see on a pay-per-view. But, little by little, this is the future. This is how every week will end up looking like. If they could do it, if they could have it their way, this is what the model Monday Night Raw will be moving forward.
The Vince McMahon comment you just made, I think Vince has tunnel vision about wrestling because he didn't have the sports influence, the outside, the outside voice talking about how we can do this better. Like he just thought he didn't have that. So to an extent, it's almost like Vince had to leave for them to allow that outside voice to come in and do some of the things that he really wanted to do, which is kind of a fascinating and even ironic thing to think about. Now, when I was watching this show, and this is really the reason why I wanted to text you, pretty much the beginning of this show, you have been saying something that I'm not sure a lot of people really, really understood. And I think it crystallized with this show. Now, you compared WWE to Broadway. Like this is not even a wrestling vehicle. It is just said spectacle. Your wife said spectacle. Because my first thought, and the person who I would have really wanted to text after this show would have been Tony Khan, because I wonder what he thought after
thought that
seeing
the whole show,
that.
dude. The whole show,
right.
I thought that. I was like, Tony's seeing this. He doesn't have blinders on. Like how,
no.
Give you an example. Vince,
he watches everything.
Vince had blinders on, like you said. Tony is tapped into this. And already you can see Tony's made some production changes by going to Max. They're doing a wider shot, which I like. They're doing more of the, that which Raw did. There was one shot that Raw did. I can't remember what match it was. It was the crane, right? It was the jib shot. And that jib panned sideways and up and backed out and came back through the clouds. Did you see that? Through the smoke and went back into the ring. And I go, holy moly, Tony had to see that. And he's probably, listen, he had to have been impressed with the production as much as we were. I was, but you're right. I was curious the whole time. What is Tony thinking about the production? Forget about the in-ring, right? We'll get to that. But as far as production goes, you can't. I mean, did you think it was too much? Like I made the joke to one of my buddies. That's he wrestles, and I said I would trade this to be sitting in the Hammerstein and watching Bryan Danielson hold a lock for 25 minutes. That's my preference for wrestling. That's not everybody else's,
Right. Yeah, I think what they didn't hammer home enough was that this was a special Raw, because there's going to be some people who check back in next week and they're going to see a very different show. They're going to see more of what Monday Night Raw has been for the last 2 or 3 years. This was, their version of a PLE and how you could do a PLE on Netflix with commercials. And that's why I know there's a lot of criticism today about the matches and such. I didn't have the same criticism about the matches that I normally would on a WWE PLE, where they stretch the thing out and there's only 5 matches and it still takes 3.5 hours. And the reason is because, to me, television is all marketing. Like your television show is just marketing for your big show. All of these Raws is just marketing for WrestleMania. That's how I see it. It's just a long setup for WrestleMania.
That's all that it's always been, right? Your TV was your marketing for whatever, you were going to the town and that's what you were promoting. Your TV, that's what it was. Superstars. It was just squash match after squash match, and then they promoted whatever pay-per-view was coming up or whatever town you were going to. They have a very unique way of doing this. I didn't mind the lack of matches because I expected that. And I've been to a big, I was at that big garden show. Remember when they did that tribal, I guess it was like the Roman Reigns, what were they doing? I forgot what it was. It was at the garden. It was like, it was like a ceremony they did.
Mm-hmm.
It was at the garden, okay? Which is, Philly, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, not the nicest crowds to just eat nonsense. And we saw that with Hogan. They booed Hogan out of that building. We sat there at the Garden for 38 minutes, and nobody complained that it was a talking segment in the beginning. Matches didn't start till like 47 minutes into the show at that Garden show a couple years ago. If they could get away with doing that, that's exactly what they want to do. Less matches, more segments, more whatever this is, more spectacle. And then you'll get like a handful of matches, and people that came for the matches will be happy because they're decent. That's how they see this. Unless you go to a house show and you're getting match after match after match.
I think that they understand that there are kind of not necessarily two different audiences, but there is a hardcore, regular weekly audience, and you're going to have to give those folks wrestling matches. Like next week on Raw, the San Jose one that I'm going to, you saw there's more actual worker kind of matches on there, like Sheamus against Ludwig Kaiser, Priest against Finn Balor in some wacky stipulation match. I think was also Chad Gable is facing a luchador. We know what I thought it would have been funny is when Chad Gable goes, I want to face the best luchador. I wish Dom would have just walked by and go, oh, but it's obviously.
I was like, oh, Hetch and Cero's going to WWE. That's what I thought.
I was, everyone you should rightfully believe it's Penta, and I was thinking the whole time, like, they keep teasing this Penta debut for LA, but they need to save it for San Jose because Penta's biggest fan is 49ers tight end George Kittle. And George Kittle's going to be, I imagine George Kittle's going to be there in San Jose. So not to say that that's why they changed it, but when I saw that he was going to
it's the market,
do the thing in
right?
LA. Yeah.
if they are still thinking that you have to debut a Hispanic star in a Hispanic market, it's San Jose, Los Angeles. It still works, you know.
Hey, I've seen Penta in many independent shows out here in the Bay Area. Very beloved for sure. That
One of
Lucha Bros.
My wife's probably she would say her favorite match ever that she has ever seen in as far as wrestling goes, and this says a lot, was the tag match at the that All Out that we went to.
The cage one?
The cage one.
When they were doing super kicks match. with the thumbtacks on the bottom.
It's her favorite match. And listen, she's not a wrestling fan, you know?
No, I mean I can see why she would have liked that match. That was insanity. So going back to when I was kind of joking about Tony Khan watching this show, I almost thought like there's been a change. Like the business has changed. And Dave kind of thought the same thing. I just got finished listening to Wrestling Observer Radio. Him and Brian were talking about it. And I'm reading this book. It's called The Founder's Mentality. I am a co-founder. My CEO, who is one of our co-founders, he's really on this book called The Founder's Mentality. And one of the things in this book is that, external forces, the idea is businesses, they grow and then they plateau and then sometimes they go down. And why is that? Well, you're trying to find the reason why that happens. And one of the theories in the book is that things that we blame as like external forces, like let's say the pandemic, like we couldn't really see the pandemic coming. And if your business was sort of dependent on something that the pandemic took away, for sure, like that's an outside force. But what the author is basically saying is that a lot of these outside forces or things that we would blame on the outside are just our own inability to keep up with what changes may be happening, and we're kind of stuck in our old ways. And I immediately thought about that when I was watching this Raw show, because I went, oh my gosh, like AEW just went to Max and their picture was a lot better as well.
Yeah.
By the way. But WWE from last Wednesday when Dynamite was on Max till last night, the game feels like it changed again. And so if you're AEW and you kind of want to keep up with what the expectation is, WWE trumped it again. And now if you're Tony Khan and you look at it and you go, man, like now we need to raise our game again because the game changed. Like the bottom line or the normal is now different. And that was my main takeaway after watching that Netflix Raw.
Yeah, I don't know. There's Tony is presenting professional wrestling. All right. He is a 5-star observer reading pro wrestling fan. That would go to the Elks Lodge and see wrestling, or be at the Hammerstein Ballroom and see wrestling. Vince McMahon was never that person, so the company's vision is very different. I think Tony cares more about the match quality than anything else, than story-driven content, which is fine. I get it. It's not a knock. I don't know if they should raise the bar to that level. I don't know if the presentation would work at that level for them. I think having your own identity and there is something to be said about the traditional professional wrestling product, but I don't know what the viewership number for that looks like. Yeah. I don't know. Like, I don't know how many of us there are. They're like, well, we just want to watch, really great pro wrestling with some story.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen what AEW is capable of, but right now in this plateaued product of 500,000 viewers a week for Dynamite, give or take, a couple 100,000 here and there. Are you looking what are you looking to hit? What is your goal number? Is production going to change that for you? I don't know. I don't know what the answer for them is, but I definitely, this is something else. This is something totally different. I said it in 2021 when I went to that show in Vegas for SummerSlam in that brand new building. I looked at Rich, and I've said it a million times here. We are here to watch something else. This is not the professional wrestling we grew up with. And you're talking 3 years ago, the product was still a Vince McMahon production.
Mm-hmm.
And they were transitioning at that point. Now with TKO in charge, listen, these are media people. They're not professional wrestling people, and they're going to do everything to keep up with the NFL and the NBA and whatever else they're competing with.
Yeah,
I don't think Tony's thinking it that way. I don't think Tony sees
I'm
it
with
that
you.
way.
And I, look, if Tony wanted to go YOLO on everyone and just empty his bank account, he could catch up to the production. He would just lose a lot of money. But there was a lot of money that he could afford.
The
to
rawness,
lose, by the way.
For a lack of a better term, the rawness of having a production that, Smash TV, right? We'll go back to that in the 90s. That whole concept was this rawness where anything could happen and mess ups happen, and that's fine. And, the camera guy falls and the camera goes all over. There is something to be said about that, about not having this squeaky clean, perfect production. But as far as what WWE did last night, that is visually more exciting than most WrestleManias, I would have to say. For an arena show, they did something that was tremendous. I mean, it's no longer this haha, it's pro wrestling and we're going to turn it on. It's a whole separate thing now. And that's great for WWE. That is what they will do. That is what they've always wanted to do. Their identity has never been professional wrestling. It's been sports entertainment, and this is where they are now. They finally achieved what they wanted. Billions of dollars in the bank and a product that is wrestling adjacent.
And the partnership with Netflix meant anybody who's doing business with Netflix as well, who is halfway understanding that there is something called pro wrestling, is all of a sudden attached to it too, because you saw all those people in the stands. Now that's not going to happen every week. Obviously, that they're in LA. That was also
I want
part
Topanga
of the
there every week.
Yeah, she should be. Or Vanessa Hudgens, right? Vanessa Hudgens is like the new one. I don't know who our Bay Area celebrities will be next week. They're probably more sports adjacent than they are
Is
Hollywood
Dave going?
adjacent. I don't think he doesn't like going to live Raws.
I would want them to just be like, oh, look, it's Dave Meltzer.
And then
Dave does like a thumbs up or something.
He gets booed like Bill Simmons when Bill Simmons flashed his Celtics logo on his phone.
That was great. That was fantastic.
But you know who he won't get booed as heavily as is Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan got booed out of the building. That was the only misstep.
Stuck to his lines.
I thought, right? I thought that was the only misstep.
You think he went back there? He's like, I did good, brother, right? I did good.
I mean, I think Jimmy Hart was probably telling him that it's not as bad as you think. It's fine. You got a reaction. Look at Dom Mysterio. Dom gets booed. Dom's great. Like that's how he probably sold it to the Hulk.
Yeah.
So one other thing, actually, I want to stay on this Tony Khan conversation. This is not really Tony Khan. It's just comparison wrestling. And then we'll kind of come back to some of the other stuff on Raw that they may or may not have set up. But, should Tony Khan, should they try to match this production? I don't think so, because you still want, you want to enhance your competitive differences, I think, if you're AEW. So what are those things?
Yeah.
I didn't prepare for this or anything, but obviously the athleticism in the in-ring, the speed in the in-ring, that is a competitive advantage, especially versus what we saw on Raw. Just a normal out-and-out regular match on Dynamite looks a lot different than one of those 4 matches that we saw on Raw. Just the difference in speed, the difference in how they do things, that's a competitive difference that I think AEW can continue promoting. The other thing that I think that they can lean into, and this is something that I don't know how much of the New Japan product you saw over the weekend, but every time I watch a New Japan show, and I'll admit I haven't been as good over these last 2 years of watching as much as I used to, I am just drawn in because of the sports presentation that they do, and also how important they make their angles. Now, they have Gaga just like everybody else, House of Torture and goofy stuff that they lean into. But the main stuff Like go to the Omega and Gabe Kidd match, and I'm not a fan of hardcore wrestling necessarily. It's like one of my least favorite things about wrestling. But the story that they were able to tell in that ring was so serious and emotional, and it just meant so many different things to both of those guys. Like, if you lean into that aspect of professional wrestling, that could be a competitive differentiator for AEW as well. I don't think they could do WWE even a tenth as good as WWE does WWE.
No, I think, I mean, the production's fine. There's nothing. I think they're a fine high-end product on television. They're experimenting with a lot of stuff. The jib shot that they incorporated because of Ring of Honor and how they were doing it. Very unique stuff at the time. I think they're fine. I think their TV's fine. Their presentation's fine. They'll obviously tighten it up a little bit. I'm not a big fan of seeing everybody in the crowd, it being lit so much. I think the show's a little too bright. I like a darkness to an arena. I like a little bit of, don't expose everything. You could hide things with lighting. But I think overall they're okay. They'll continue to adapt eventually, little by little, and change some certain things. But you're not going to be able to match what WWE's doing, with Netflix backing them like that.
Yeah. Okay, so going back to Raw, let's talk a little bit about kind of the things that they seem to build. One of those things was John Cena being back, pretty much full time this year, and he did this promo about how he's not the same guy, hasn't had any wins, and probably not in the running for the title. And then he remembered there was this thing called the Royal Rumble that he could join, and it gives him a lottery ticket, an opportunity to get a shot for the world title. It was a very John Cena promo, but very well done. He plays to the crowd. I almost feel like it might be slightly different crowd today that he's playing to, but because he was such a big star and WWE is into nostalgia, it came across as very fun and very, like I said, very John Cena. Are you in on this John Cena retirement run?
I guess it's fine. It is what it is. It's funny. Like I appreciate Cena. I was never a Cena guy. He's not my generation of wrestling. He was someone that, for the most part, growing up watching. I mean, growing up, I was an adult when he came up, but it seemed a little bit more forced than anything else, and I understood people's aggravation with it. I don't have that same nostalgia feeling towards John Cena. I get it. I get that he's important. I get that he's there. There's no knock at John Cena, but I mean, listen, you're going to put the title on him? Yeah, that's fine. You can do whatever you want at this point. It doesn't matter. I don't think it really matters. I've
suggested this before, but, if you think about someone Googling or going into Chat GPT and trying to find some answers about who's held the title more than the most in WWE, and if that answer is John Cena instead of Ric Flair, I think that will probably make WWE people happier.
Yeah, well, revisionist history, right? They're able
but
to...
just the idea of like who represents the history of your company. Do you want it to be Rick, or do you want it to be Cena? Cena's a little bit more clean cut. He's a little bit more famous worldwide because he's in the movies. And, Rick has had his problems. You probably Google Ric Flair, probably on the front page after his profiles is probably some negative news. So I would understand if they wanted Cena to own that, not really truthful number of world titles, but their own fictitious number of world titles. I could see why they want that. All right, let's talk about... no, go ahead.
No, it's their guy. Rick was never their guy. Rick was from someplace else that they acquired. Cena was primarily them. So, of course, I see them as wanting John Cena to hold, that record. And again, this is the thing, right? The record books. They were really big on redoing the record books. And we spoke about that from the time that we started the show, that they were looking, when that Universal title was created, they wanted, people like Lesnar and Goldberg holding titles because they're telling a story of the prestige of the world title. Roman Reigns, he's the third most, he's fourth at this point? Bruno, Hogan,
longest
Backlund,
reign.
and him. Longest reign. There's a reason for that.
Okay, The Rock also showed up, and I'm not exactly sure what we were supposed to think coming out of Raw, but I think what I thought was either they're unsure of whether or not not that they're unsure, they're sure of whether or not he's going to wrestle at WrestleMania, but there are two different avenues. And one of those avenues does not include Cody Rhodes, and that's probably because of this John Cena angle. I think the elephant in the room is this note that Rock handed Cody Rhodes on the Raw after WrestleMania, which they did not reference in storyline. So they're saving that, though I would have had somebody ask, like, that was like the biggest moment on the Raw after Mania, and all of a sudden people have amnesia about it. But it does look they leaned a little bit more closely to Rock and Roman. Now, I don't know if that means they're doing it this year or they're going to have this whole year-long thing where they'll keep alluding to it, the High Chief versus the Tribal Chief. But it does look like they have moved away from Cody, if I'm reading this correctly. What did you see coming out of the Rock segment to open up Raw?
I think that was it was interesting that he was just a babyface good guy, like he was like a real person. He wasn't The Rock doing The Rock. He was talking about how great everybody is and how happy he is. It was a very, positive promo. It looks like that's where it's headed. I know that they want to do that match. They've wanted to do that match for the last 5 years, Rock and Roman. And I think this is fine. I'm okay with that. Cody could do something else, and it'll be Cody and Cena and Rock and Roman, and then you'll do whoever holds that other title and Punk.
You know what I want them to do with Rock's character whenever he comes out? I think there should be two versions of The Rock. There should be the guy who comes out all buttoned down in the suit, and you just call him TKO Rock because he is a board member of TKO.
Yeah.
And so when TKO Rock comes out, then we know he's
Mr.
just
Johnson.
all about he's Mr. Johnson. He's all about business. He's just talking about Ari Emanuel and Mark Shapiro and Bella Bajaria and all these people who the wrestling fans who are watching are like, who are you even talking about, dude? And then when he's in actual final boss character, then he comes out with the vest. He's holding a bottle of Terramana and just taking hits from it, during his promos. I think that's how they should just distinguish. So we know, okay, this is like the television character, Final Boss Rock, and this is the guy who, gets 30 million in stock because of his deal. Like that those are the differences in the two guys. So that's what I would do. By the way, did you see the Red One movie on Amazon Prime?
No, I didn't. I didn't see it. Was it good?
I would more call it watchable than good. But, it got slammed because of the way that it came out, because people thought that the goal was about box office when the goal was not really about box office. It was originally supposed to only be on Amazon Prime. Very watchable, entertaining, probably not worth the money that they spent to get all of those high dollar movie stars in it. But I totally fine, like completely watchable. I had fun with it.
It's a Christmas movie.
Yeah, Christmas movie. Okay, so also coming out of that show, we got Rhea Ripley winning her title back and hanging out with the American Badass, the Undertaker. And then we also had Jey Uso getting an upset victory over Drew McIntyre, which I think signifies that Drew McIntyre is going to be on SmackDown, doing business on the way off of the other brand. And then in the main event, Seth Rollins and CM Punk. Punk wins with the two back-to-back go-to-sleeps. Those dudes look like they were killing each other with that move. Maybe we stopped doing that move.
I thought at least one of them was hurt at the end. They did a great job at selling, or they were banged up. They beat the crap out of each other. I mean, Lance said it on Observer Live just before we went on, and I agree with him. CM Punk, I mean, put on a masterclass on how to take his move. Either that or he doesn't know how to take his move and he just nailed his face sideways on that knee. He looked incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, he also looked really tired.
I mean, he's 40, what, 45?
Did they say he was 47?
He's 46. Yeah, he just turned 46 in October. So, listen, I'm 40 and I was gas taking the Christmas decorations up.
Listen. I have an even better example for you. My cousins and I went to go shoot some hoop the other day. And the reason why I go out there is because my son, who's 24, he's kind of in his basketball prime. Like, he's playing a lot and he's really confident in his game, and he's actually pretty good. And so you're like, okay, I'll go out there and I'll play, because he's going out there and he wants me to play. So, we didn't even have enough to play full court. So we were just playing half court. And at that evening, I had to go to Dave's house to watch Wrestle Dynasty. And so, there's a handful of us at Dave's, and I'm already feeling it. Like, I've had surgery on my right knee, so I knew that was going to kind of blow up and get swollen. Both knees have arthritis, so I just knew, I was like, okay, the next 3 days are going to be hell for me to even walk around the house. It is Tuesday as we are recording this. We played on Saturday morning, and my right knee still feels like hell. Like, that is, and I'm actually a year older than Punk, a year and a half older than Punk. So that is 48 right there for you, people listening. Don't get old. That's the whole thing. If you can stay 30 for the rest of your life, do so. All right. Did you get to watch any of this New Japan stuff?
I watched everything. I've watched every single thing, including Collision. The last 2 weeks, I've seen every single thing that's happened.
That is the one show that I missed, was Collision. And I thought, I'll try and skip through Collision before we do We're Live,
John
Pal.
Moxley,
but I couldn't.
John Moxley murdered the Rock and Roll Express.
What is he thinking, man? He's trying to murder my childhood? What's going on?
I know. Poor Ricky.
So, it's funny you mentioned Collision, because when we got off of Wrestling Observer Radio on Friday, in my mind, I was like, okay, how am I going to watch SmackDown, the 3-hour version of SmackDown, Wrestle Kingdom, which was 4 hours, and I was going to watch it the next morning, and then have all of those things watched before I went to Dave's for Wrestle Dynasty. And so here I'm thinking, like, I did a fantastic job. I got through SmackDown, watched Wrestle Kingdom, headed over to Dave's, and I was ready. You know what the first thing he asked me was?
Oh,
did you watch Collision?
Did he?
And I was like, how was I supposed to watch Collision, dude? Like, I watched, so many hours of wrestling just to get ready for Dynasty, and the first thing he asked me about was Collision. But the reason he asked me is because I guess they went off the air on Collision basically saying, here are all these good matches on Wrestle Dynasty, but they actually couldn't promote the network that it was going to be on.
Yeah, I know.
So
I thought it was fine. I thought Collision was whatever. It was okay. It was a fun show. It's Collision, and I like watching it. I did think Wrestle Dynasty was fantastic.
I liked it. I thought it was a really good show. I would say, we see a lot of wrestling, and so now, and AEW pay-per-views are great. WrestleMania was great. There's some other WWE shows that have been really good. So it's almost like, in order to give something like a 5 stars or an AA or an A++, it like has to be like the best thing you've ever seen, just because everything is above average for the most part now. Like, it's really rare that we watch a special show and it's not good. But that was kind of the norm going back 10 years. Like, everything we watched was not good, but now everything we watch is pretty darn good. So,
well, 10 years ago, if we're going back 2014, right? The network comes out 2013, 2014. It's all about going back for a lot of people watching those shows. The pay-per-views, yeah, you're right, was not good. WWE was not good. But 2015, 2016, 2017, New Japan was putting on bangers. I mean, as far as match quality goes, that was really a great era, and it really started from the Bullet Club. I thought this year's Wrestle Kingdom was probably the least that I was into out of all the years that I've watched. And there's been worse Wrestle Kingdoms. I'm not saying that this was the worst. A couple of years ago, it wasn't so bad. I mean, the pandemic era, right? It wasn't great. They couldn't really do much, but I would say that this was really lacking. And I wonder if it's the fact that they moved. You know, if Kenny Omega and Gabe Kidd were on Wrestle Kingdom and the Bucks were on Wrestle Kingdom, and the match was, Ricochet and Zack Sabre instead of Ricochet and Shota Umino, how would we have felt? I'm sure we would have felt a little bit different. But I get why they did what they did. They got to put their talent over for their own show and their own product. They can't just have American AEW wrestlers there and winning everything. I would say that the second night was so much better than the first, but I don't know what that means for New Japan. If it matters that they had a really good second night with a bunch of foreigners.
Right. What did you think? Now, you just talked about New Japan's quality of matches, and right around in that time frame is the ascension of Kenny Omega to the pro wrestling superstar. What a comeback, right? Like that match.
Yeah.
It made me realize a lot of things, but it also made me just like appreciate where he is today, even though he himself says that his prime is behind him. And I was like, brother, if your prime is behind you, then I am fine with your post prime, because he looked tremendous. The storytelling was tremendous. Again, it was a little bit more of a garbage match than I like, but what it did was it kind of spaced out a lot of his high spots. It gave the high spots time. Like, sometimes when you watch an AEW Kenny Omega match, it's like boom, 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 boom. He's got to get all of his things in because that's what the fans want to see from him. But in this match, which was longer and it was a little more drawn out, he was able to create some space in between all of his spots. I just thought the whole thing was fantastic. And I am not somebody who necessarily remembers what my favorite matches are, because there's just so much content. Like my brain just can't, maybe if I wrote it down and like gave it a star rating and maybe wrote some notes about it at the time, I could go back and remember. But I just watch a lot of these matches and go like, yeah, that was great. Move on. Next match. Oh yeah, that was great too. So I can't really tell like what was the best match of the year, where everyone's doing their Observer Awards. I'm going to remember this match though. And it's because of the story that they told, more so than how great the near falls were, how great the kick out. It was just the story of the old foreigner coming back in home, and the home audience going like, yeah, we appreciate you, but we like this guy more. Like that was just tremendous.
Yeah, I was shocked that we got that Kenny, right? And every time, we have not seen that guy in the United States. No. Give me a Kenny Omega match that's at that level that he has wrestled on AEW TV. Right? And dude, we watch every week. We've seen every show. I mean, and this is a great question for the chat room too. Like I'm asking, or Dave, you know what? Make this a Q&A for Dave. I want to know. Give him this one. I have followed Kenny's career since DDT.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very familiar with him. I've seen what he did in Japan. That final run he had in Japan was one match. I mean, it was actually art. You want to talk about like the art of professional wrestling? What that guy did, forget about the Okada match, right? I mean, that's its own thing. But he had that match with everybody. Everybody, he had a high level, high impact match that you're like, oh my God, this guy's amazing. Here's one. Andrew Brown in the chat room. Mm-hmm. Osprey at Forbidden Door. Yeah, I would say that would be it, right? But was this better than Ospreay and him at Forbidden Door?
I like this match better, but I also would not argue if people liked that other match better. You know, and you know why? I'll tell you why. That match was about the move, right? That match was about Ospreay hitting this move on Kenny Omega and it's spooking him out for the entire year. Like that's what I remember about that match.
Yeah.
More so than anything else. I just remember the story coming, and I don't like that story. So that kind of biases me against that match. And I loved this Omega and Gabe Kidd story. So that biases me for that match.
Yeah, I mean, when was this match? June 2023, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that was
Kenny
that was
out
the
all
Canada
last
one.
year. Yeah.
Kenny was out all last year. Yeah, I mean, this got an 8.82 on Cage side. On Cage Match. So let's see what they gave this one. Kenny's overall rank number is a 955. Can you believe that? Okay, so so let's see what they gave this one. How many? Can I see this? I cannot see this.
I'm sure Dave's rating is going to be 5 or even 5+. For sure.
It has to be. It has to be 5+. But okay, you know what, Danielson? You know what was a fantastic match, but not on this level because they had a time limit. Omega Danielson at Grand Slam. I was there for that.
I love that match.
I thought that was a not at this level though.
No.
I wouldn't say it had this intensity. I wouldn't say.
Plus,
I mean, this was really something very special.
Yeah,
very special. But do we get this Kenny on TV? You know and that's been the question. You got the best pro wrestler. You got two of the best pro wrestlers of that entire run. You have Omega. You have Okada. Now you have Will Ospreay. You got Jay White, another guy that is a 5-star machine. You have so many of these guys. What will Omega deliver at this level on TV? I know that he has to be selective on what he does and when he does it, but we don't really get this guy. It's
will he
rare.
Be pushed? Will he be pushed as the top guy? I want to see him as a babyface.
I'm going to tell you something, and I never like to do fantasy booking like at a whim like this, but put that freaking title on him.
Mm-hmm.
Put it on him. I know they have a plan. I know they're doing whatever they're doing with Mox. Have this guy win the title and let him be the wrestler's world champion. Instead of, they did that Miami Vice gimmick with him, and I hated it. Cool guy Kenny Omega. No, I don't want cool guy Kenny Omega. I don't want him. He's a video game guy. He's an anime guy. He's not a this suave Miami dude. It just felt very disingenuous, and I just want to see this guy kick people's heads off.
He was a heel, to be fair, so that was
why
okay
do that,
as
right?
a heel. But right, that.
But why do that? Why turn the biggest babyface into a heel?
So the first thing when AEW went on Max, the first thing that I did was I went back to that Double or Nothing show in Vegas, the very first one, 2019.
So did I. Yeah, so did I.
And I was just interested because I've never seen that show on video before. I was there live, and that's the only time I've ever watched it. And it is quite funny to see the differences in how they do wrestling today. But that when AEW started, I was of the opinion, and I'm sure there were other people, that Kenny Omega should be the first champion and the first star, because if you are differentiating yourself, we talked about competitive differentiation, Kenny Omega as your babyface champ, the wrestler's champ, like you just said, the guy who the fans can rely on to put forth the best effort, in ring. And I wanted to see if that character could possibly go wrestling mainstream, like not real mainstream, but like wrestling mainstream.
Yeah.
Would fans see that guy from New Japan and go, wow, that guy's different, and I'm really into his humbleness or whatever it is, his uniqueness, whatever it is that people like about Kenny. But they didn't, right? They went Jericho first, and then they went. Did it go Omega, then Moxley or Moxley?
Mox?
I forget the lineage, but they didn't do it. They had the opportunity, but there were the situations with whether or not the VPs should be on top. I know they had to go through that thing, but they didn't do it. And now here we are 5 years later, and they have an opportunity to redo that. And I think that they should, because I want to see what that version of Kenny Omega, how the overall wrestling zeitgeist responds to that character, because I'm fascinated with that version of Kenny Omega.
It's so funny. Lance is messaging me right now.
Uh-oh.
What'd you think of Raw? What did you think of Raw?
Yeah, I've talked to him a little bit about it.
Yeah, He got. Oh, here we go. Hold on.
Just tell him, say, listen to We're Live, pal. We're talking about it for 60 minutes.
Yeah, we'll listen to We're Live, pal. Garrett said, listen to We're Live, pal.
We still never did the Lance run-in on this show, which we've always wanted to do.
We will have to. We will have to.
The one thing about Dynasty, I think it showed what AEW fans could really look forward to in 2025, one of them being Kenny Omega. But it also kind of exposed the warts that are still there, because the thing that the thing that was sticking out like a sore thumb was Omega's on this show, the Young Bucks are on this show, Jack Perry is on this show. How can they all be in the same building together without just being so mad at each other based on AEW television storylines, right? Like that is the thing that is unresolved, and I don't know if they will resolve it on AEW TV. But it just, at the same time that I was like, this is what pro wrestling could be for AEW, at the same time that I was thinking that, I also thought, and yet here are the things that I'm thinking about when I'm watching this show, which are these things that they have not yet resolved and may never resolve. They just may forget about them and reboot. And that kind of was like, it didn't hurt my appreciation for the show, but it did remind me of some of the things that I'm just like, I wish they would fix these problems.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to what they do this year. I mean, I really want to see what they could do. They have all those pieces happening, man. I mean, that lineup of talent is astronomical. It's just a matter of, okay, now you got to present them in a way that people are going to want to tune in every single week. And it can't just be, hey, you're getting a great match. That's always been the thing for AEW, and I love that. But listen, I will tune in for that. I will tune in for whoever it is. I don't care. Give me a great match. You know what? Throw Claudio and Will Ospreay in a match. You know what? That's a fantastic match for me to watch. But you have to cater to not me. You got to cater to my kid. And guess what my kid freaking loves? Orange Cassidy. Loves Orange Cassidy. He dressed up like Orange Cassidy to go to the Hammerstein. He wanted to wear the Orange Cassidy. He wore the outfit. People were taking photos with him. It was awesome. But why does he like Orange Cassidy? Because he was on a show called The Floor is Lava.
Yeah.
And loved him. So you got to get those kids. And those kids are now looking for a 7-star banger. It's great when you get it and some will recognize it. The first match I ever saw that I remember as a kid, right? Like, do you have that? Do you have the first match you saw and you're like, oh, no, this is a high-level match. This is a great match. Do you know what it was?
Like when I realized that wrestling in the ring could be something different, would have been probably either the Wrestling Classic pay-per-view, which I rented because there were like two, from what I remember, there were some really good Dynamite Kid matches on that show. I think he may have even wrestled Savage on that show, but the real one,
85.
Yeah. And I think that tape, I probably would not have rented it until a year later. But the real one would have been Savage Steamboat from WrestleMania 3, I think.
Okay. So I'm a little younger than you, right? For me, the first time I saw wrestling, and on my own, without anybody telling me, right? Like no outside, like my father's not telling me like, oh yeah, this guy is great, or my cousin's not telling me this guy is great. It was SummerSlam 91, and it was Mr. Perfect, and it was Bret Hart. That was the match that I was like, oh wow, this is at a different level.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's a 5-star by today's standards, but watching that match happen, remember, as a kid, it was all about the Hulk Hogan's and the Ultimate Warriors and the Undertaker, and it was it was cartoons, and then you got to see these guys, and they worked. I mean, this tremendous match, and I remember like I could time the spots at this point because it got so engraved in my head on how that match was. We joke about it on Mat Men all the time that I turned around and I looked at Stu Hart and I go, is that your boy over there? And I had my cigarette in my mouth and my like muckraker hat. And I'm like, he's got it. He's got it. And I just took a big puff of my cigarette. It felt like it was one of those moments that I knew was a great match. My kid doesn't, I'm sure he's going to find it, but
yeah, he'll figure it out.
He's 7. But you have to cater to those kids. You have to do something to create a new generation of viewership. It can't just be 40-year-olds judging stars.
No. I'm with you. But and so, it's talking about sort of exposing the warts. Your kid, your son, wants a hero to root for, like if he was watching a movie. And AEW today is all heels. And this is why, I did a show with for this website on the Fight Game podcast. And we kind of did like these wishes for the companies. And my wish for AEW was for them to lean into a babyface, because I think that's going to be, it may not be the way for them to kind of get hot again, but I think it's the igniter fluid. Like, you have to have a baby face who the fans get behind and want to see win the belt in order to get to get that feeling back. I think it starts with a baby face. And
nobody's a baby face.
They lean so far into the heels right now. Yeah. Adam Copeland did come back as a baby face, but the first thing that he did was make himself the joke.
Yeah, but he also called Chris Jericho an asshole. I mean, babyface doesn't act like that. I know Garrett is. We lost Garrett here. Garrett's absolutely correct. They need a baby. They need a Bryan Danielson, right? But even Bryan Danielson is screaming, "I'm going to kick your effing head in." You need those babyface characters. I don't know. Danielson is a great babyface. Or Orange Cassidy, great babyface. But are those guys going to be your world champion? Who have you created? What babyface is at that level to hold the world title? A Kenny Omega would be that guy. I would see Kenny as that guy. Will Ospreay. But is Will Ospreay a babyface? Yeah, I guess now he is. Yeah, now 100% he is. I'd like to see them do something. Is Garrett back? No. Uh-oh. Did Garrett lose power? You know what? I'll wrap it up. Garrett's gone. He bailed. He did not want to talk about this anymore. Guys, Garrett lost. I guess he lost power. I guess he's gone. But perfect timing. The show's coming to an end. We'll be back next week with another show. All right, guys. Take care.